I feel like today's guest is an expert in something everybody can relate to. Everybody needs a little bit of this in their life because these are still hard times, but in a fun way. So joining me today, let me give him a little intro. His name is James Miller. He is a licensed psychotherapist. Girl, you need one of these as a best friend. Just go find one. Look him up in a book and be like, I need a best friend, and it's you. He's the host and executive producer of a nationally broadcasted and syndicated show called Lifeology on the radio. He's a practicing clinician in the mental health field with more than 25 years of experience. So, he's met a lot of crazy people, so we won't seem so bad. And he regularly contributes to Forbes, Newsweek, New York Times, USA Today, just like us, you guys. You know how they call us, and they always want us on the show. It's like that. He is a classically trained pianist like myself. I'm positive he's probably played the glockenspiel. He's a composer, and he's the author of Life Lessons. You are the expert on your life, which I'm sure I would fail. So let's meet him. Let's bring him to the show. Let's hear it for James Miller.
Good morning. It's such a pleasure to be on your show today.
Thank you for being here. Listen, so you know that I'm under the weather today, and I told you earlier, I'm sorry I sound like a man, but thank God you sound like a man too.
I sound like one too, so we're good.
Perfect. Two fellas hanging out. So I gave your official intro, but tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, what brought you just mental health? Why did you get into it? All that fun stuff.
Well, as a kid, I always had my little friends would come up and talk to me about all their problems. And so I just had a natural affinity just to talk to people. Not that I knew that I could get paid for it, but I was like, all right, I'll talk to you. But it's funny. So when I went into school, I wanted to be a geneticist, but I got a big music scholarship, changed to music. And then I went to psychology and then with a music minor. So just like everybody, I was like, what am I going to do? And so we all have all these talents and these skills. And I was able to kind of find a way to bring it all together years later. So here I am. Here in sunny Florida. I had a really successful practice in the Washington, D.C. area, gave that up and came down to Florida and started Lifeology.
So yeah. Where is your view? Everybody's talking about the view off of your balcony. Are you looking over the
I live, okay. It's a beautiful view. Yeah. So I have, so the ocean is actually on this side of my house, but this is all the canal. So if anyone knows Fort Lauderdale, I live on top of Las Olas Boulevard. It's a fancy place, but yeah, it's a gorgeous building. In fact, I have a restaurant in my apartment, so I can get my own room service, etc. So very fancy. So every night I'm like, can I have a bottle of wine?
I should always tell people this, but you should know we're a very nosy group. So you'll be talking, we'll be like, James, what's on that second shelf of the top?
That's fine.
Mom, we're really, really close.
That's hysterical.
Just know it. Somebody said, I know that area. My brother lives in Boca Raton.
So, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, nice.
So beautiful place. So, I feel like everybody would probably guess that during the pandemic, you were very busy.
I was very busy. Well, it's funny because I didn't want to get away too far away from being a clinician. So I still see some patients and I consult with a lot of people, but majority of things I do now is more front facing for publications and things like that. So it's interesting. So I write a lot about that in the publications that I'm in, when it comes to the pandemic, et cetera. So I kind of do both things. I do the clinical aspect of it, and then I do the broader aspect of it is how does it affect the population as a whole?
Yeah. So, well, let's start with today. I feel like, well, again, coming out of the pandemic, I feel like if you didn't have a therapist before the pandemic, you had one coming out of the pandemic. But I think that in some ways, some of the things are the same, right? Like, how many times do you find that you are talking to people who, are struggling, whether anxiety or depression or any of those things? And it's really manifesting itself in like a physical way. Like, do you feel like there's a huge connection between those two?
Yes. So in psychology, we teach that whatever you think about determines what you feel. What you feel determines how your body responds. And so if I'm thinking about something, for example, today I have a really busy day. We all have busy days. So if I think about that, and all of a sudden that busyness, those busy thoughts, and create a sense of feeling overwhelmed, and overwhelmed then creates this anxiety, and my body starts to start to have fatigue, etc. So it's really important to be mindful of what you think about, because whether you realize it or not, what you think, as I said, creates your emotions. Your emotion creates that physiological response.
Okay, how do I just be happy? I don't want to lay a big question on you.
I mean, that's an easy one. I'm just kidding. So, what many people think is that happiness is a response to something, and it is. I mean, we have that, but happiness is really, or I'd probably say more contentment may be a better way to look at it, because contentment is your perception about something. So if I look at something and I experience this and I'm like, oh, this makes me happy, and then all of a sudden, I feel good, but then when that situation slightly changes, then all of a sudden I lose my happiness. So it's important to say how I view something, whether it's good, bad, indifferent. All I know is that I'm safe, I'm okay, life is good. So everything else around me may look horrible, but if I can focus on one thing, like I'm okay, life is good, nothing's changed, that's really altered my state of mind, I'm good. And so when we can recognize that one aspect of our life and focus on that allows for us to create that contentment in our life that doesn't change, is always constant. Because as we know, life happens all the time, things blow up in our life. And so if we allow those situations to always determine how we feel, unfortunately, we won't be able to find that, and we won't be able to find our own empowerment.
So when you say we got to find the one thing, so because what you said earlier, you said I got a busy day, right? I got 20,000 things to do today.
Yeah.
So when you say pick the thing that makes you happy, the thing that brings you joy through the day, is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Like I love doing comedy. So
yeah, well, it's really more in the moment. So there's a couple ways to do it. So there's, you guys saw my place. What I do for me is I make sure my environment creates the mood I want. So there's lots of light. I have music you can't hear right now, but I have meditation music going on in the background. I have lavender essential oils going on. So create a whole environment. So all your five senses need to always be used. And so when you can create an environment that allows for you to feel the way you want to feel, pictures everywhere, all those things allow for you to sit in a space that is conducive, that reflects how you want to feel. And so that is something where when life happens, thoughts happen, my environment can pull me back and ground me to the reality to say, yeah, life sucks, but you're good. This is a safe place for you. And so when you focus on what's around you and get out of your head, that allows for you to then find to recenter yourself.
All right. So it's funny you're saying this because, all right. So we've only been dating for like 5 minutes. So
I love it. It's going really well.
A little bit about me. So I'm recently divorced. I have 3 kids. They're 23, 21, 19. And I'm very much into talking about mental health, anxiety. Mm-hmm. I call us an anxiety family. There's lots of struggles here, which I don't think is unusual, especially given their age bracket, right? I think college can be a really stressful time as well. And kind of coming out of college and like, who am I going to be? All of that. I remember it. But I specifically just had a conversation with all 3 of my kids about their nest. I call it your nest. And I found it going through the divorce. I had to make that decision whether I was going to stay here in this nest or sell this nest and move to another nest. And then I realized that all the other nests are super expensive and they're all broken. And I was like, this nest is already broken, but I know what kind of broken it is. So I'm going to stay. And so my kids, like any other kids, their rooms are disgusting and they're crazy, whatever. Yeah. But I said to them, I was like, it was really important to me going through my divorce that I didn't want to be here. Financially, I had to be here. I didn't really want to. And I feel like that's a situation for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so what could I do with the limited budget that I had to change some things that made it feel like a new place for me, or a place that I could create new memories for myself. And so I had told my kids, I decided to stay, and I did this and I did this. And, our audience has been watching lots of the changes that are happening. And I don't know that I've ever really said it out loud, why I was making these changes, but it makes sense. And so, when talking to my kids and they're all struggling at different times, and I'm like, I look at your space, I look at your room, I look at your dorm room, I look at your apartment, and this is not your nest. It's not a calm place. It's a place to just throw your stuff. And so, like talking about like your space behind you just looks like perfection. It's beautiful light, and you have the sun, you got the lavender. I got 3 nasty dogs walking around, one smells like poop all the time. And, I think what you're saying is so great. And I'm so on board because I'm saying the same thing
Yeah,
to my children. But, what do you think are those like important small changes that people can make? So whether
sure. That's a great
they're
question.
on a budget or
Mhm.
in a situation where they can't, get all the
Correct. Yeah.
in, or the sounds of their house are not meditation sounds, they're
Yeah.
crying babies, or they're
Totally. Totally.
screaming little kids. I think that those are the things, like you're saying. I think, like, I
Mhm.
started playing meditation music, my sisters came over, it might have been, it was before the pandemic, but I definitely went through my lavender and meditation phase. And people were walking in and it was trash. My whole house was trash. But you have this fun music and this lavender. I was like, oh, I'm trying. I'm gonna get this. So, and I was like, listen, you come in, and it's just the dichotomy between the two things happening.
That's funny.
It was very crazy. But like, what are some just small things that people can
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, and I'm glad you made it more practical because my life's very different than other people's as well. Although I do have
I
this,
love it.
I have a little old dog you'll see running around here in a
Yeah,
second.
no, I'm
My little senile dog. Yeah, so I one thing in theory, it's great to be able to do everything that I've created for myself. I mean, obviously, I'm just like you. Well, yeah, I'm recently single myself, so I had to redo all this stuff because I was like, I want something to look different. So the thing is, though, it's what's really kind of cool is when people struggle, you want to look around your place. So forget about all the 5 senses that you're using. Look at your space. Whatever your baseline is of what your tidiness level is going to be a really good indication of how well you're doing. It's a good barometer. So if I come into my house and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, it looks like a bomb went off in here. I'm like, what is going on? And so if I can take a moment to say, all right, James, how are you doing? What's your mental health like? What's it feel like? What's going on? So if I can do a great inventory, like, you know what? I've really been struggling with this, because what happens is when we are doing well, we have the time and energy to dedicate to our chores and to our responsibility. But when we don't, and we're lost in our head, all of a sudden those things start to add up. Dishes in the sink, laundry, wherever, all that just adds up. So one thing I always have people do is look at your space. If your space, everyone has a different tidiness level. So whatever your tidiness level is, that is going to be an indication if you're doing well or not. So if all of a sudden it's below that, then it's probably an indication that something's going on. So if something's going on, the way to put your mental health back in order is literally put your space back in order. And that is what's going to help you, because the physical movement, what it does is without getting too technical, the physical movement, it allows for you to process what you're going through. And as you put it, you're creating order. So you're creating order and structure. And that's what we need in order to pull ourselves back. So regardless of what happens in your life, if you can bring your tidiness level of what your house looks like to the level that is healthiest for you, that will reset your emotions and reset how you look at the world. And then the cool thing is that's when you start to be a little bit more specific and mindful, and you'll slowly increase that tidiness level. And then pretty soon you are a different version of how you were before.
James, you just scared at least 600 ladies, because they all just looked around, they were like, I
Oh my God.
not in a good space. I can't imagine anybody looked around and was like, I'm amazing. I'm killing it here. Nobody said that, but it's true. What's so funny is that I used to work on the Nate Berkus show. I worked on a couple like talk shows, stuff like that. But the Nate Berkus show was really interesting because he was a design guy.
Yeah.
And his philosophy, like a lot of the furniture that he would buy is high end, super beautiful, you can't afford it, whatever. But one of the things he said all the time, which resonated with the poor people, was that no matter what you have, no matter what you can afford or what is in your space, make sure you love it.
Yeah.
Like, life is not about collecting more things. It is about surrounding yourself with things that make you smile. Things that when you look at them, you're like, oh, I remember when I got that table and whatever. Like and so to me, it was important. When I grew up, and tell me if this is part of it, I think how we all grew up says a lot about how we currently keep our spaces.
Yes.
Like when we were younger, my mom, my grandma, we used to go out and they'd call it yarding. We're getting real poor now, James. Yarding. That's when you go to yard sales on the weekends. You go
Oh,
yarding.
okay.
And they just love finding these little finds and like tchotchkes, a lot of
Yeah.
tchotchkes. And so I just grew up with like you automatically have tchotchkes and you surround yourself with them. And after a while, I was like, you gotta dust those, you gotta move them, you gotta. I was
You
like,
do, yeah.
for me, it's just too much stuff.
Yeah.
So it is, I think, a big part of how do we decide what we want, you know, for
Well, I think that's the thing. When you have a lot of stuff, you want to sit there and experience it. Like, does this feel like too many things? And if it does, then okay, your body will automatically tell you give you a tell. So a tell is if you look around, you feel a little anxious or a little agitated or a little annoyed. It's probably because your space is you have too much in your space. Because our body, we create these there's the proximity aspect of it. So if I'm sitting in a space that just feels really crowded, I will start to feel agitated. And so if you can, so that's why if we go into a space that isn't as agitated, that doesn't have as much stuff, you feel like, oh, I can actually move around. I can breathe.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you were heard at the beginning of the show, I was talking about some of the trashy television I was watching.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. Which I loved. But I was saying when I watched those shows is that like, if you're not sure if you're a crazy person, go on one of these shows. I can tell you in at least 3 episodes.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. And, but I feel like too, and maybe it's because I'm older, maybe it's because I do feel like I'm surrounded by people with anxiety or depression, or my own comes out at different times. Like we talk about it a lot, but I feel like there are a lot of people that avoid the conversation. There are a lot of people that don't want to own or acknowledge that they're struggling. Like, I feel like people have, I mean, maybe it's just me, but do you feel like there are some people who, like, I'm super open to talking about mental health. Are there still people that really don't want to talk about it? Like in your practice, did you find that there were people that you're like, have you heard of anxiety? Have you heard about depression? Like, and like, so my first question is, are there people, is that true that the people are either open or closed? And like, what are signs or signals that you might want to just keep in your brain that like, hey, maybe you're not somebody that is like ongoing anxiety or ongoing depression, but here are some things you should look for that might be indicators that, you know what, I feel like everybody could be helped by a therapist.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
But like, what are some things that we should be looking for just in our daily lives? They're like, hey, okay.
Yeah. I always tell people, if you go to see a therapist, doesn't mean, I mean, yeah, we need it in the moment, but sometimes I always recommend people see a therapist every 6 months, once a year, just to check in, because it helps you really look at blind spots to say, what's going on in my life, what's not going on in my life. Things are going really well. That's great. How to do more of that. So to see a therapist doesn't necessarily mean you're in dire straits. But yeah, there are a lot of people I've worked with who don't like to think of mental health because they think of it as a crutch, or they think, oh, I can just get over this myself. And which is true. That's fine. But there's nothing wrong with realizing we all struggle with something. I struggle with something. You struggle with something, all of that. So those are natural things to experience. But when it comes to everyday life, though, you really want to see where do you find fulfillment? Where do you find contentment? And all of a sudden, if you think about something and your heart rate increases, well, that's probably some anxiety right there. And so when we start to experience those things, you want to ask yourself, how far out in the future am I thinking? So if I'm thinking about something that's happening tonight, and all of a sudden I start to feel my heart races and I start to feel that panic or that anxiety, all of a sudden I have to say, all right, James, well, don't think that far out till 8 o'clock at night. Think till noon. Let me just think that far out. So right now it's 9 o'clock. If I think out for 3 hours, okay, I don't feel anxious. So let me just focus on the next 3 hours. I can do that. I'm empowered now. That's something I can do. So it's really important to see what your body does, because thoughts create our emotions, emotions create a response. And if your body is telling you something, it always does, then that's probably a good indication that you're focusing on something that you probably shouldn't focus on, or maybe you're looking at the situation in a different way.
You're good at this, James. You should be a therapist.
I've done it once or twice. But let me say this. So this is kind of cool as well. So there's actually 15 common thinking errors. So thinking error is this. I don't have my glasses around me. If I put my glasses on.
Go ahead.
You what?
I was going to say,
so if I broke.
Can I guess what they are? Because
you probably know. I mean, you may not know the terms, but you're like, I know this. Whatever.
Okay, you
My ex did this, or my friends do this. Whatever. So what they are is, so they're like glasses. So with the glasses, as we know, skew whatever you see. So if you get the wrong prescription, it messes up what you see. So the 15 common thinking errors are essentially that, where if something happens, you view the situation a certain way, which then changes how you feel, which then changes how you respond. One of them that we probably have all heard of, or that we've either do or we know someone who does, is they're always being right. So the lens of I knew you were going to do that one. So the lens is, if someone is talking to you and all of a sudden they have to be right about everything, everything has to be right, they have to be the right one, they're using a lens of a thinking error called being right all the time. And so what happens is they experience that, then everything you say creates this anger within them, and then the response is, I am right, I am right, I am right. And so that is one of the many of them.
Okay, now let me just stop you right here. I feel like moms in particular might be always wearing these glasses because they are right. And I have, my kids specifically. Look, everybody say teenagers always have to be right. Tanya just said, sounds like the kids in my classroom. Like, I feel like at the age where my kids are, like, Tanya's a teacher. She teaches little ones, right? And so that dynamic is, I'm the teacher, I'm right, you're little, you sit down, you listen. But as your kids get older, and now they're either looking you in the eye or looking down at you, like, Dean is going to be 24 this year, and I will wear these glasses for the rest of my life, James. And I'm having a hard time. And I've said on our show before that I have really tried at this point in my motherhood journey to learn how to shut my mouth, to not give my opinion unless they ask, which is really, really hard. Or to not always state the obvious. I think it's really hard, because when you told that story, I was like, I think I'm the one with the glasses.
No, the difference though, there's a difference between having to prove you're right versus you are right, if that makes sense. So you're coming in with a lot of knowledge, a lot of wisdom, which is fair. But if you have to prove it to such a degree to win the fight or win the argument, that's the difference.
Okay, I cross over.
And you're like, I do that too.
I think you were trying to make it better, but you just couldn't.
I was, and then I was like, as I kept talking, I was like, it's not getting
you
better.
Really cemented it in, I think. Okay, so that's one. So I have that.
That's one of them. Yes. Another one is Heaven's reward fallacy, where I do this, and so I must get a reward for that. So I do something nice for you, and you didn't do something back for me, so that's not fair. Or keeping score.
I thought you meant like ice cream.
No.
Like you do something and I give you ice cream.
No. You do something good for someone, and you expect it to be fair that they do something back for you.
No,
something just like, Another one will be keeping score. I did this for you, and I keep doing this over and over, and you're not giving me something back, and so therefore there's something wrong. And so we do it because we want something back, as opposed to just doing something just to be kind.
Okay, but let me ask you this, James. What if your partner, you're with somebody who you are feeling like you're constantly giving and you're not doing it for anything in return, but at some point in a partnership, one would expect that return, right? I feel like everything that you're saying is like, this could happen. I'm like, yeah, but James, let's think about it. Not everything is so black and white. There's a lot of
that's another one, black and white thinking. It's this or that, and that's a thinking error, because nothing is always black and white like that. So all these things I'm saying, we experience all these in our daily life, but if it becomes a negative interaction, that's where it becomes a thinking error. There's nothing wrong with holding people accountable. We should hold people accountable. All those things are true. But when it all of a sudden creates a debilitating feeling within you, that you're angry, you're resentful, you're this or that, then that's when it turns into a thinking error.
I have all the above.
All the above.
I feel like now we have to have you on for 15 more days for each one of the errors every day.
Well, I write about that in my book too. So I'm not that I'm trying to book my book, but if you want to read about that, you can read all about the thinking error.
I was going to say, so tell us about the book. Where can people find it? All of the things.
Well, thank you. So it's called Life Lessons. You Are the Expert on Your Life, a workbook, a really long title. It's kind of cool in the sense of I wrote it there may be other books like this, but I haven't seen them. So I wrote it in the sense of, you can go talk to someone like me. You can read as many self-help books as you want, which is great. But at the end of the day, you are the expert on your life. So for example, if I'm feeling grief, okay, so as I said, recently with your breakup, feeling grief. And so when I experienced the grief, I'm like, all right, James, when did you feel grief before? The situation may be slightly different, but you felt grief before. What did you do that worked for you to help you through it? What did you do that did not work for you? And so we don't have to reinvent the wheel in that respect. So it's all of a sudden, okay, I did X, Y, and Z. Let me try and do X, Y, and Z again because I know that worked for me. Or let me avoid X, Y, and Z because I don't want to, make it worse. And so that's what it boils down to that. So there are 37 chapters broken up into 9 different categories. It can be from how to handle your emotions, how to handle the holidays, how to move on with your life, how to self-regulate. There's lots of categories there. The chapters are super short. They're only like 3 pages long. I give you a baseline of how to deal with each emotion you're experiencing. And then the workbook aspect of it is I ask you questions. When did you experience this? What can you do, et cetera? So it's really helpful in the sense of you can either read it front to back like a normal book, or you can just pick and choose what you need in the moment. And so each chapter, I write a couple sentences and say, this is what it's about. I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I need right now.
I love it. I love it, James, because I am a big proponent. Like I said, we've been dealing with anxiety since my daughter was in 2nd grade, and spent so many years of just trying to get her to learn her brain. Like that was something that we talked about. Like, let's learn how you learn. It's not like how everybody else learns. It processes differently. And so I think that anything that really gets people, because a big part of what she does with the anxiety is, what were you thinking about right before you had the feeling? What was that trigger for you? And I think that for the most part, we all kind of get caught up in the minutia, all of the things of life. And very rarely do we think about, how did we get to this point, this thought process going on. So I think it's amazing. And you're also a classically trained pianist as well. Tell me about that. Did you ever play the glockenspiel is my question.
I played the glockenspiel when I was in grade 6.
Yes.
And so the baby glockenspiel, yes, that was my best one. That was always fun. Yeah. So as we know, piano is actually in the percussion section, is actually not in the strings section like most people think. But so I played since I was 3rd grade is when I started.
Yeah, me too.
And it's so funny. I learned my left and right that way, my L for my left hand. Anyway, but yeah, so I played forever. And so I have my 3rd album coming out, which I'm really excited about. In fact, it comes out next couple of weeks. So I, as a composer, I compose all piano music. And so it's kind of cool. And I think it's cool. I didn't say I was good, but I just said I composed. But so the way it works, so my first album is called Consolation. Second was called Restoration. And so what it does is it goes through it's kind of like a book. So each composition is written like a chapter in a book. And so it goes through how you start, and it goes all the way through the consolation. You find hope, and then the next one is through starts with awakening and goes all the way down to, I forgot where it goes to, but it goes through each chapter. So the first one's for grief and loss. The second one is for restoration of healing. And the third one, I have a couple different titles I want to use for it, but it's neat. So I've noticed that the more I write, and I write with neurological and psychological concepts to create the person just be able to relax. And so
I was going to say, is this the kind of music that you would play in the background that you're
Yes, it is. Yeah. So like for every name of I try and keep it as simple as possible. So the name of each composition is just one word. And so I try to embody that concept and emotional construct in that composition. And so my stage name is James S. Miller because there's like a million of us. So I was like trying to be like
So you can find James at James Miller Lifeology. That is your at on, I'm guessing, Instagram and Facebook.
Instagram, yeah. I'm all over Instagram. And we have Facebook a little bit, but all over Instagram. So say hi to me in your place.
And then how do they find your music if they would like to find it?
Yeah, so it's on everything you can think of, Pandora, Spotify, just James S. Miller. You can find it there. When it comes to my website, jamesmillerlifeology.com.
Awesome.
If you want to listen to my radio show, it's I'm in 17 major markets like LA, Vegas, DC, like all the big ones. And then it's also archived on all podcasting platforms too. And that's James Miller Lifeology.
.com. Yes. And the name of the book.
No. Oh, yeah. No. Well, I'm as far as the name of my show, James Miller Life. It's called James Miller Lifeology Radio is what it's called. Oh. But the name of the book is Life Lessons. You Are the Experts on Your Life, a workbook by James Miller. And that you can find that on Amazon or in your favorite bookstore.
There. And Michelle, sexy producer Michelle, just put that link in there.
Thank you, Michelle.
as
It was great
well.
talking to you earlier, Michelle, as well. I was a guest on Michelle's show, and I'm waiting for her. I'm gonna call you out, Michelle. I offered to have you be on my show a while ago, and you have not yet taken me up on that. So
Wow.
everyone has now heard that. And Dena, you have to come on my show too, please.
James, I would love to come on your show, but I'd have to be sitting in the orange chair behind you. So,
I actually just got this one. I got this chair.
For
For you, of course. And so after everything that happened in my life, I was like, it's gonna be different. So I went and got this chair, got a new rug. So things are different. One last thing I want to say though, kind of tangential back to what we were talking about before. Your house is indicative of how you feel. If you can't buy anything new, which I don't think you have to buy anything new, just change your house around. Move your furniture around, because what it does is it makes you sit and look at the world in a different way. If you're struggling to come up with an answer, sit in a different spot in your house, because you're peripherally seeing the world differently. So that's got a little workaround. Don't buy new things. You don't have to. Just change your house around if you can.
Yeah, it was funny. Nate used to say a lot. He'd say, shop your house. Like, this mirror is always in this bedroom. Let's bring it out. Let's put it in. And so I did. I changed a lot in my house. Just like you're saying, just to give it a different feel.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a big proponent of like juju, and I was like, I get some bad juju. I got the thing that you can
sage it. Yeah, I know sage as well. Yeah.
So yeah, it is. Yeah, we rearrange furniture with Dena very often. A lot of times I'll just go, where do we put this chair? And it doesn't always look good, but it is what it is. Well, James, thank you so much for joining us. I know he said he had to go at 9:15.
I have to do now on my own, so I got to do that.
Yes, thank you so much, James, and hopefully I can be in the orange chair one day. I'm happy to do that at your leisure, so it'll be great. But thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much,
James. I'll see you.